Welcome to another episode of We Talk. This is Marjorie Morgan, and I'm here with a new guest. And as is usual, I'm going to ask my guests to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Ganan Adamu, and I am a journalist, presenter, producer, international multimedia trainer, and an entrepreneur. So I've got about five hats on.
Excellent, excellent. So, which hat are you wearing today?
You know what? I think it's great. All hats, actually. I also forgot I'm a single mum as well. So I like to wear all my hats. Obviously, being a BBC presenter and journalist, I was trying to stay diplomatic, but I always remind myself that, there's a human being behind being a journalist. So we're always going to have opinions. I don't get emotional, but that's probably years of training as a journalist, being
Ah,
a little bit robotic, but still having that human side to me.
all right, tell me a little about your human side. How did you get to be from baby Gunan to where you are now?
So my journeys, I would say my journeys are kind of it's maybe similar to some migrants who have come to Liverpool. So I'm not Liverpool born black. I was born in Nigeria in 1980. So my mum, the funny thing is my mum was born in Camberwell in London. So my granddad was a journalist. Him and my grandma moved to London. I think it was 1954 or 1955. So he came to work for Oxford and Cambridge University as a printer, stroke, well, journalist. So he wrote books on African studies and African history, mainly Nigeria. So my mum, she always says she was the first northern child to be born in the UK, and northern in terms of northern Nigeria. So I'm northern Nigerian, I'm also northern UK.
UK.
I'm northern all over. So my grandparents came to UK, and just before Nigeria was given its independence in 1960, the British, obviously Nigeria was still a British colony, took back a lot of the, trained and educated Nigerians back to Nigeria so they would maintain or retain the UK way of life. So from systems to policies to just everything really, so they still had a bit of a hold. And my granddad was one of those. So he went back and he ran Nigeria's media, in the north, Nigeria's media organization, mainly newspaper back then. So journalism has always been in my blood. So my parents met in Nigeria, and lucky for my mom, or should I say, lucky for my dad, he was working for United Nations. So a lot of his work was around the HIV/AIDS virus. So from finding a cure to awareness, tackling stigma, because Africa back then just didn't want to accept HIV at all, So a lot of my dad's work was around that and traveling internationally. So he worked for the UN as well as the World Health Organization. So the UN actually asked him and a few colleagues, you can move, we will support you in moving your family anywhere in the world. Where would you like to move to? And my dad said Liverpool. And but you know what? He was forward thinking, because I couldn't imagine being from London. I couldn't imagine being from Birmingham or anywhere like that. I think, he made the right decision in terms of saying Liverpool's the place that I want my family to grow up in. And he had visited the UK quite a few times with his job. And we had one family member and in Liverpool. So when he'd been to visit, he just loved the way Liverpool was in terms of the community aspect, how calm it was compared to London. So luckily for him, my mum was already a British citizen by birth,
Of course.
which, which meant when she brought us over, everything was just quick. It wasn't the racism that we see now with immigration and, um, immigration and asylum seekers or anything like that. My mum was fortunate enough that my grandparents were able to have done, did the paperwork. My mum was knowledgeable enough when she got here to also carry forward that paperwork as well. Because, again, my granddad was a journalist and he was with the elite, so to speak. So he understood how the UK system worked.
Okay, with regard to the UK system and how it works and your high-flying credentials, because it seems like your family have always been sort of international, although you're now based in Liverpool. What is it about Liverpool that makes you stay? With regard to the fact that you are an international journalist, you train abroad, you work abroad, you've got connections all over the world. What makes you stay in Liverpool?
Liverpool for me is not just a city. It's home. It's family. And we're coming up to the 40th anniversary of the well, I say race, the uprising, the Liverpool 8 uprising.
Mm.
And one of the big things for me, especially and my family, is that we moved here with just one family. My auntie, my uncle, and my cousins. So we didn't have a vast majority of people that we knew in Liverpool, but we still made that leap to come here, and Liverpool became a family. It became a home. So even though I've worked away, and I've moved away, it's my calming place. I feel calm in Liverpool. And anyone who's come here, whether it's for schooling, education, for, a partner, even when they break up in a relationship, they still stay because there's just that, regardless of the problems that we have, it is a beautiful place to be in. I've gone through racism, I've had heartbreak, all those things. But coming back home, even like the sense of humor, you know, like you can go and stand at a bus stop and talk to anyone. And before you know it, you know their family history, you know where they're going, why they're going, you know if they've got grandkids or like it's just everyone's a friend.
That's a common story. In fact, I interviewed one of your colleagues, or I had a talk with one of your colleagues, Jermaine, just the other week, and he said the same thing, that you can stand at a bus stop and get to know people. And I've only been here coming up 7 years, and I found it friendly, and I do consider it home, despite, like you say, there are some issues which we'll come on to in a moment that disrupt the calm of a home. But there is a friendliness and a warmth about Liverpool that you can't find very many places. And I was brought up in the West Country, and it was quite friendly there. London, not so much, where I also worked, but yeah, Liverpool, it does feel right. You're correct. But tell me a little, if you can, about things that disrupt your peace, because I know recently there has been quite a bit, and you've spoken out, which is not your usual position. You've spoken out publicly about what's been happening in Wavertree. Do you want to discuss that a bit?
Yeah, so we've lived, I say we, so my mum has lived in Wavertree for 35 years. So even though, so we started off when we moved to Liverpool, we started off on Princess Road, lived in a two-bed flat, with some where the Cumbernamarty Centre is, Millennium Centre. There used to be a laundrette there, and then there used to be a park as well. So it was, and then you had Toxteth Sports Centre. So we loved living around there. But then we moved to Grove Street, to another two-bedroom flat, and we loved Grove Street. I'm still friends with a lot of the kids that we grew up in that area. It was, and again, another amazing community. But then obviously my mum was on the housing list with three kids, and we were given this house in Wavertree. And it was the first time that I felt that we were not as protected. So we never ever had problems until we moved around here. We got robbed within like the first year.
Oh
Um,
no.
yeah, but then we were close to our family as well. So that helped. But it was the first time we kind of thought, oh, we didn't have the protection of L8, which was
Oh.
really weird. Yeah. But you know, but we've made it our home for 35 years, and I've always left and come back, and so have my brothers. But recently, you know, the past 4 years, there's been this assault on the area of student properties, HMOs, to the point where, you know, I usually go to work Monday evening. So my show's every Monday night. And I'll drive to work, and then by the time I'm coming home at 10 o'clock, there's nowhere to park because all the student properties have got, I mean, the majority of the students have got cars. So that's one issue. And this is something that really peeved me off because, you know, the city spent over £3 million on cycle lanes and promoting a greener society, but yet the universities haven't told or haven't been strict on telling these students not to bring cars to the city, you know. So you find, so that's one thing that really, really peeved me off. But also I know how expensive it is to get insurance around this area because of the amount of student homes and student cars that get broken into. So for a lot of these, you think, are you even registered? I know I'm being a bit, you know, but are you
No,
even registered
a
in this
fair
city?
comment, yes.
You know, because I know how expensive, like when I first got my insurance, you know, as a new driver, even for the first 2 years, I was paying about £200 to £300 a month for this area.
Wow.
Yeah. You
That's
know,
a
so
lot.
exactly. So then I'm thinking, wait a minute, are you even registered to drive in the city? You know, so that was one aspect. And then the noise. There's always been families around here. And like I said, the past 4 years, we've got, so on one side of us, we've got a student house. On the other side, there's three next door to each other. Behind us, there's three. And then in front of us, there's three. So
Oh,
we're literally blocked in by student noise. So for a long time, there's two properties behind who are constantly partying every single day. And like you mentioned, you know, as a BBC journalist, it's not my position. And we are told not to use our position
yeah.
to protest or campaign or anything like that. But,
Because the BBC have got to be neutral, and it's not a personal platform.
but when it starts to affect your mental health, when it starts to affect the old people in our street that we've looked after and supported, when it starts to affect my son because his teacher's telling me that he's constantly tired and he's distracted, that's when I kind of blew because I thought, how many times do I need to complain? This is way before, you know, Joanne Anderson became mayor. This is, you know, you're talking Joe Anderson days. And it was like every time, you know, the stand up to Picton guys, the Love Wavertree guys, we were all complaining. Nothing was being done. And then on top of that, anytime there was a renovation, conversion, we would get the letter after the work had been done. So you couldn't even reject it. So we felt that a lot of it was like, was it underhand? Was it fraudulent? Was it, you know, there was all kinds because it just didn't make sense. And then on top of that, when the Echo wrote a story about it, it was Lisa Rand who wrote the story and she did her research. She found that some of the developers actually, when you look at their details on Company House, were being fined for not, you know, doing their accountants, their books properly. You know, so I thought, well, why isn't the council doing this due diligence? You know, and one of the developers, he put in to do a conversion on his property in Croxton and it got rejected because somebody rejected it and she found all of this out. But yet in our area, we didn't even get the chance to say, well, actually, how can the council not see that there's a family property and around this family property, there's all these HMOs. And then on top of that, there's a lot of these grey buildings because you know, that you see. And so that doesn't look nice. So the same people, when they develop a property, a student property, they paint them grey. So when you come into my street, you will see all these grey properties, you know, and then on top of that, they take out so many bricks that the walls are so thin that I can hear everything. So even as I'm talking now, they probably can hear what I'm saying, you know, and they know that I'm not happy because it's the noise. So you could hear that down the stairs.
Wow.
You could hear the arguing. You could hear them having a shower with music on. You could hear them cooking. You can hear when they've dropped something. So where our kitchen is, there's one kitchen where they've got made into a kitchen lounge on both sides. So when they're watching football or they're playing music and they're swearing, and my little boy is trying to do his schoolwork, and all he's hearing is the F word and, you know, F bombs and music. Like, so, and also one of the things that really got me going, where I did my whole Twitter rant for like a week, was the property behind was partied from 1 a.m. till 9:30 a.m.
The
And
following morning.
Following morning, and no support, no
What,
support.
what about police?
No. And that's why I tweeted the police as well, because I said, you are tweeting that we can get in contact because of noise disturbance. And it's been shown that between, you know, they say between the hours of, you know, I think it's like 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. Between, is it 8 a.m.? There should be no noise. So after 11 p.m., taxis don't beep, do they?
No,
You know,
yeah, but
so
yeah, they're not allowed to beep outside the house, not legally anyway. Yeah.
so now during COVID and lockdown, we're having these parties, you know, and the police isn't coming out, and then they're asking me stupid questions when I've complained.
Like,
Oh, if they're mixing households, well, there's 30 people. Of course, they're not. You know, of course, they're mixing households. Why are you asking me for? If I'm telling you there's a party, then address the situation. You can hear it, you know. So you've got party there, and then next door decided to start having a party. So I knocked round, and I said it was a Wednesday night,
middle
and
of the week.
so 11:30 at night. My son is in bed. He's meant to be going to school. Knocked round and said, "Can you put the noise down? Can you keep the noise down?" Not even like I didn't say turn it off. I said, "Can you reduce the noise?" Because there was bass as well. And he went, yeah, 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 yeah. And I said, "No, I'm asking you nicely. Can you just put the like reduce the
Turn it
volume?"
down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Close the door on me. So when I came back into the kitchen, I heard one of them said, "God, she's an effing idiot." And that's how thin the walls are. So I went back round and I knocked and I said, "How dare you call me effing idiot?" And they were surprised that I heard them. And then the lad said, "Well, you shouldn't be knocking at our door at 11:30 at night," and slammed the door on a
So,
Wednesday.
so
On a Wednesday.
excuse me, you're complaining about the noise, and they're saying that you shouldn't be knocking at their door to complain about the noise, and they're calling you names. Well,
Yeah.
when you
Because what the issue now is, no one's ever been held to account. You know, so people in the area have formally complained about the noise, you know, and but the issue is the landlords haven't been fined, or their guarantors haven't been told, and people, you know, and landlords are also lying to these students and telling them that this is a student's area. It is not a student's area. So they're behaving as if we're in their space and this is a student, you know, like it's
Wavertree is a student village suddenly.
yeah, like literally that's how they behave. So when you complain, it's like, how dare you? You know, you shouldn't be living around here because it's a student area. Well, actually, no, it's a
Well,
community.
in a way, I guess that they feel that they have a right because they're paying £9,000 a year for their university course, and then they're paying for their accommodation, and they, like you say, there's nobody to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
But when you started talking, you mentioned a word which some may consider really strong, but I agree with it 100% because I live in the area too, and I put in complaints. You said it's an assault.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a full-on assault day and night. Can you tell me who do you mentioned the landlords there and the council and the universities? What kind of responsibility do you think they could take? What kind of action? Because at the moment it's like they're aware of it because people, residents like you and I, are full-time admin assistants, sort of doing noise complaint reports to the council, you know, as well as our other work to survive. So what do you think of these bodies, the universities, the council and the landlords, what should they do?
So I think I shared, was it you that shared it and I tweeted it? It was in Bristol, where now they've started fining
Yeah,
student houses, for parties. And it's just little things like that, but also, you know, telling them that you can't, Liverpool is not a city where you take advantage, and that's how it felt because a lot of these developers don't come from Liverpool, so it's like Liverpool just seems to be this, I feel that it's a place where you come, you've got free reign, and that's how it's felt for the past 4 years. And and I feel there's times when I did feel sorry for the councillors, but I thought, well, what's the need of you being a councillor if you can't fight for me, you know for my house, for my household, because me and my mum and the little one live together. I pay £140 a month council
council
tax.
tax. Mm.
You know what I mean? I've had my wind mirror not broken twice because of skips coming into skip lorries coming into our street and knocking it. I've had to pay over £100 to get that fixed. I've had no refund. Who
Mm.
do I put that claim to? Do you know what I mean? The road's messed up. You know, every day if you come down our street, you will see the bins. So this is like, obviously we complained about the bins, but the bins are always messed up. They're always overflowing. You
Do you,
know,
I personally think that the universities, as well as the landlords, should be responsible for some education to these people, and maybe their parents as well, when they're moving to a different city. Remind them that these things don't happen miraculously. They've got to do it.
but also, you know what, Marge? And that's the thing, because my mum was saying, back in the 80s and early 90s, when we lived around here, and when we first moved around here, there used to be a student liaison officer. So when they knew that there were students in the street and they knew the address, they would actually knock and say, have they given you any trouble? This is our direct contact. We've spoken to them, and they would what's the word I'm looking for? Prematurely predict if there was any issues. So we
Yeah.
would always, so that's what she said they used to do. But then the past few years, that hasn't happened
So,
whatsoever.
so the student liaison officer, is that from the council or from the university?
University, so you would get it from University of Liverpool, from John Moores University, from Hope University. They would, well, Hope not at the time, but University of Liverpool and John Moores, their liaison officer from, like, whether it was the student union or wherever, would knock around to say, this is who we are, this is our contact, this is what the students have to adhere to. So it's things like that, but we've not had that at all. And with the influx, and as I said, the assault of student properties that we've had in the area, you would think that the universities would be a lot more proactive in doing that, because, obviously it started with the Dales, like Borrowdale, Lidderdale, all of them before it came this way. So they could have easily have predicted that this would happen. So that, so the universities and the councillors and the landlords should have been, and the police should have been working together, because what's happening as well is that there's drugs in the area. There's more drugs than we've ever had in this area because of students. And some people might say, oh, you're being harsh. But actually, no, because I've seen them. So one sec. My mum wants to get something out of the freezer. Go on, quick.
Sorry.
No worries.
This is what happens when you do interviews at home.
I'll cut that bit out. Or I can leave it in. It's real.
You know what I mean? Hurry up.
Hello, Mummy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So, so, there's so much drugs in the area now. Because like I said to the police, there's no way you could be fully, just having a drink and partying from 1 a.m. till 9 a.m. I can't even let my son play out because you see, those little metal
canisters,
canisters, loads of them, again, because of the amount of cars in the street, he can't play. He's got no friends in the street. And it's sad because I grew up in the street. I had loads of friends. We used to knock for each other, but there's no families, so he's got no friends in the street. So I've had to compensate by him going to football, rugby, scouts, swimming. So he's got an active life and he's mixing with kids because he has not got kids that he can play with in the area. You know, so these are all the things that for me, if I worked in the council, I would have been looking at when I'm allowing these HMOs to pop up everywhere. You know, is it destroying a community? Is it destroying, you know, a good quality of life for families? You know, you can't say, oh, we might get sued for this or we might get sued for that. It's in terms of our rights as, you know, as residents, but also it's our human rights, you know.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Do you think our human rights have been breached by this influx of students and the constant noise? And when I say, you know, people say, well, they've gone now. We'll talk about the 30th of June in a second. But they've gone now, but it's all year round that we have noise, because the building work.
Well, people don't realise that when I've said, oh, you know, they're partying all the time, some people go, oh, but that's what students do. No, that's not what students do. We've allowed it to be a thing, you know. Like, I don't mind if you want to party on a Thursday or a Friday, or even like a Friday and Saturday.
Yeah.
But the fact that if you are surrounded by students and they're partying Monday till Sunday, that's not what students do. You don't get to party Monday to Sunday.
Interestingly, I saw a comment from a university lecturer. I don't know whether you saw that recently, or whether it's Twitter or in the Echo, that they live in the area where the students have started to, their populations increase and they've got a young child. And now they are feeling under pressure because their young child can't sleep or rest.
Yeah.
But before, it was just like the problem was exported. But because the population is spread to that area, now this university lecturer is interested in getting some action taken. But until it impacts people personally, I think.
Well, this is it.
Yeah, they can sweep it under the carpet.
I shouldn't be spending every single day of my life complaining about noise.
Is it every day, do you think?
Oh my God. If you live, and this is what I was trying to explain, I'm surrounded by, well, the family is surrounded by 8 student properties.
Yeah.
So sometimes and the worst thing about it is they don't start at 10. They'll start at maybe 1 a.m. or they'll start at 4:30 a.m. and then they'll party till like 9:30, 10 a.m. Sometimes till midday. So when you're waking, they're sleeping, and then they'll start again. You know, so but then it's also when they're coming back from clubbing or where they've been, it's the screaming in the streets.
Yeah.
You know, knocking people's bins over, kicking people's cars.
There's no respect.
There's no respect, and sometimes people go, well, you know, it's not students. Well, they are, because I know they're students. Because I'm a nosy neighbour. I'm a journalist. You know, I know all the student properties. Like I say this to people, I've been a student twice in my life. I'll probably be a student again, you know, as old as, but I was a student when I was a kid, you know. But even then, I think it's the respect thing. But also, let me move, I'm going to slightly diverge. Some of these students that are coming into the city, especially white students, might have never mixed with Black people either. So they're bringing also their racism and their discrimination and their stereotypes of certain areas. So there's a lack of respect there as well. And people don't realize this. Like, we've got a mixed, you know, we've got this another Bangladeshi family, and they've complained to Paula Barker because they've heard racist language.
Against them.
Yeah, well, just racist language in general, you know. So it's things like that you go, there's so much that the universities have to do in terms of when these students are coming into the city, understanding communities, understanding there's preconceived ideas that they're bringing into an area. So there's loads of issues that come with this. When, you know, when you complain, it's like, who are you talking to? Because again, they probably might not have met a Black person you know.
Yeah.
And so there's this kind of hierarchy of white privilege that, you know, that also comes into play, because the majority of the students found, are white, who
I
have come
don't.
from the city.
That's a good point, actually, because I don't think on my street or the street that backs onto me, or either side, I've seen any black students or students of colour. And if I did speak to them, they would behave differently. In fact, we've got a refugee asylum seeker house a few doors away. No noise from them at all. I speak to them, and they speak to me. We interact. Okay, there is a respect there, but from, as you say, people may not like it, but it's the truth. There is and it's not a divergence from the fact that there is disrespect from the students. They don't respect the community they've come into. And
the parents don't, because I've seen the parents don't, because to them it's like, I sometimes think that if they actually knew what I did and they knew who I was, they wouldn't behave the way they did or the way they do. And that's the interesting part about it, because I think sometimes they must think, oh, it's just a it's just a black family, you know. And it's sad that I'm having to say this, but they have no respect, because they think it's just a black family that probably doesn't really work, or, you know, like
those negative stereotypes again.
Do you know what I mean? And that's what pisses me off. Sorry, because you think you're coming into an area from wherever you've come from in the UK with these preconceived stereotypes and racist behavior, that you think that this is a neighborhood that you can take advantage of, and nobody should say anything because you pay whatever hundreds of pounds a month. Actually, I bought my home. I own my house. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's all these things where you think, oh, where they literally have made up their minds in terms of who they think I am.
Yeah. So the fact that you're a homeowner, likewise, some homeowners and families are being driven out by this constant noise. What can we do, or what do you think is the suggestions for people like you and I who have a stake? We've got our homes in these communities, but we are still being battered day and night by noise.
I've got hope, because I think this is the first time that I've actually felt hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, as annoyed as I was with, you know, the counsellors like, you know, Calvin and Abdul and Natalie, I know they were probably trying to do their best, but the powers that be didn't allow them to. And I think now with the new mayor, with Joanne Anderson, there seems to be a different rhetoric. There seems to be a different energy, you know. So I'm very hopeful. I'm a fighter, you know, and I said to my mum, we are not moving, because this area is home. This area is amazing. And that's why they move here, because if I wanted to walk into town, I can walk and take a nice stroll into town. You know, we've got Asda, Tesco, Aldi, you know, like we are bang in the middle of everything. If I want to go to Old Swan, you know, if I want to go to Egbert, if I want, like,
it's a couple of miles each way.
You know, we've got Edge Lane train station, you know, like, it's a nice area to be, and there's some lovely cafes around here, and it's beautiful. So for me, and I said this to other residents who have moved, that I didn't want to be chased out, because where would I go?
But the appeal that we have, you know, when you in your family moved here 30 odd years ago, me 7 years ago, the appeal to this community, isn't that what's bringing the students as well to the community? But and I hope the universities and the council, etc., pay attention to this, because that influx is also destroying the community. So how do we find a balance?
It's the level of respect, because we could all, I mean, since, you know, my whole Twitter rant, as well as the campaign of, you know, Stand Up to Picton and the Lawrence Road groups and Love Wavertree groups, they've been really working hard. And, you know, and since that, we've had a decent night's sleep, because the councillors have, you know, letters have been written, you know, so things are happening. However, obviously we've had the litter that's been disturbing. But also what I noticed this time round is that new students have already started moving in. So we don't even have the break as before. So already they'd moved in, and there was noise, a little party which started at 4:30 a.m.
Oh no.
4:30 a.m. during the week. This is the issue during the week, and it finished at around 6 a.m. I wake up at 7. So and you know what? The mad thing is, I just don't even know how I'm functioning, because at the beginning, when we weren't getting any support, I was having to take sleeping pills. You know,
You know the deprivation of sleep is a form of torture.
Yeah.
So once again, going back to human rights, you talk about your son being tired in school because of lack of sleep, and you just mentioned, and it was just with so much joy, you had a decent night's sleep, like you haven't had that for a long time.
Oh, I can't remember the last time I had it. Like before, before we got the new mayor. Before then it was just it was nothing. And even during lockdown as well. And that was the worst part about it, even during lockdown. So one of the big things that I complained about was, when you have your NHS COVID app, and then you keep the Bluetooth on, I was constantly getting alerts. You're in a high risk area. Somebody around you, somebody in your area has got COVID, and it was non-stop, And there was even a time when both properties had COVID. So
no,
and they told me themselves, because I was like, oh God, I haven't seen you come out the house for ages. Oh yeah, we all had COVID. Well, like for a lot of them, it's like a badge of honor.
All right. So it's becoming a health risk as well, both through lack of sleep, but also through this infectious disease, which it is a pandemic after all. But you talk about the new people moving in, having parties, the people before. Were they breaching COVID rules?
But I wouldn't even know, because my issue is not even about COVID anymore. It's about respect for the area that you live in. Coming to university is not a party. It's not a party time. You come to study, but then you want the noise to be down when you're doing your dissertation. Do you know what I mean? Like it goes both ways. And if I wanted to be a spiteful resident, I could easily get a sound system. I'm banging it all over, but blast it. But I think it's the university. I've been told by some of the university staff that they do have these conversations with the students.
Well, Gunan, I applaud you. I really do, because you say if you were spiteful, but my tether, I reached the end of it a couple of years ago when parties were going on all day and all night, and I couldn't work because I work from home as well, so I couldn't work. So I decided, if you're partying in the night, I'm partying in the day. So they couldn't sleep. It was very childish, but I did do it. And then the noise stopped after that, because they were studying.
Yeah.
But I thought, well, you're disturbing me, and it's daytime. I'm allowed to do this. So
my friend did that, and he said it worked the treat, because he was like, oh, we can both do this. And he is a DJ as well. So he brought out his sound system, and he said from when he woke up at say 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, he will play the music for a good few hours.
Yeah, but why do we have to get to that length? And I don't want, it was a one-off. I don't want to repeat that.
Yeah.
But so we know what's wrong, and like you say, the 30th has happened, and I saw on Twitter, even walking on my street, all the bins were overflowing. When people were moving out, I heard people getting into their cars saying, oh, we can't take this, there's no room in the car, it was dumped on the street.
Yeah.
And so today, this morning, I was pleased to hear the council bins coming up and doing an extra load. Do you think that the students and the landlords are going to be charged, or is that just going to...
I hope so, because, and this is the thing, like I've had this conversation with so many people, because that I didn't realize so many people saw my tweets. So I've had a lot of people reach out to me, and a lot of people who have lived in this area for a long time, especially people who've lived like in the Dales, have reached out and said these students are a different class of students. They've never experienced this type before, you know, and it's weird because they're a lot more aggressive,
Mm.
a lot more noisy, and a lot more disrespectful, you know, and the parents aren't helping because I've seen parents come, you know, to help the kids, but the parents are also dumping stuff. Now we've got skips. I think some of the universities actually left skips in different parts of the city and told the students that these are where the skips are. But laziness and lack of respect for the area told them, no, no, we're not going to clean that because we pay X amount. They can deal with it. So I was also told that the landlords, if you know you've got tenants leaving, you're meant to come and help clean up, you
But
know,
don't
and
see that.
didn't see any at all. So it's been annoying because that's not what I want to use my platform for. And I'm such a positive person that I felt that it just killed my positivity. And but also in terms of my work, yeah, I do my show on a Monday, but I'm used to always sharing videos of what you know. I haven't been able to do that because my concentration level of editing is so low that I get tired. You know, so I'm even behind in terms of what I should be doing for my own platform because I'm constantly tired.
You've mentioned your show a couple of times, and a lot of people do know it. But for those who don't, what is your show?
So it's called Upfront and it's on BBC Radio Merseyside. That's why I'm so upfront.
And it's every Monday.
Every Monday, 7 till 9. And it's a Black magazine show as well. So that's why I'm very particular when I talk about race, because a lot of people who might watch this might not understand the microaggressions and the racist undertones in which young people are coming into the city with, you know, and it's something that needs to be addressed. Some might think, oh, it's nothing, you know, these are just students, but no, the fact that they've come into an area that is so diverse with a lack of respect says a lot. So it's not just being students. Sometimes I can feel is this thing of no, you don't matter.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, as a Black person, we're aware of when somebody's being racist. So I don't need anybody else to explain racism to me or to tell me if I've been subject to a racist attack, because I know it. I've had enough experience. So when people say to you, sadly, I had enough experience about it. So when people say to you, you know, don't you think you're being a little sensitive and surely it wasn't meant like that? How do you respond to that?
You know, the funny thing is, Marge, I've stopped responding. It's not my job anymore. You know, it's not my job
I
to
applaud that.
you know what I mean? I've stopped. It's like if you don't get it, why should you gaslight me into having a conversation in which you refuse to understand or listen anyway? You know, because I'm 40, I'm 41 this year. So I've had that experience of constantly having to explain myself why I felt something was racist. So I remember saying to a colleague of mine who's a white female, I said to her, the only way I can explain racism to you is imagine if you're a lone female with two men and you're having a conversation with one man, and then another man comes over and looks at you in a certain way or touches your shoulder in a certain way. You know that feeling isn't right. And you know that he's been maybe pervy or was not a nice feeling. And then you turn around to your male friend and say to him, did you see what he did? And he says, oh no, this didn't seem like anything to me. And then you've then got to explain to him why you felt that he was being perverted, you know, pervy
Yeah.
or slimy. And then your friend is still saying, but I don't get it. But I don't get it. And she's like, oh, I said, and that's how it feels. You will never get it. So it doesn't make sense to me to even explain it. If I say to you, this is how I feel about it, your job is to go, I'm really sorry that's what can we do to help?
How
Not
can I support you?
how can I support you?
Make
Not
it
I want
different.
you know,
Yeah.
I want a dissertation or a thesis on why you felt that was racist, you know, and this is the thing, you know, for some people, they might think it's just students, you know, but I know that they're coming to this city with these behaviors because of seeing how they react. I've seen how they react when my mum tells them something and she's dressed in her Nigerian attire I've seen their faces, but they don't see that I'm seeing it. But then when I come out with my Scouse accent and I've said something, it's like the faces change. So you see it.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a disgrace, and it's so much pressure on us. And I like the fact that you're batting it back to set them and saying that this isn't for me to deal with, it's for you. Just stepping back a little bit, last year when George Floyd was murdered, did you have a similar feeling of educating people or leading them in, to the fount of knowledge?
No. I think it might be, I don't know whether it's an age thing or I don't care anymore.
No, I think it's
Right.
a bit of both, because
Yeah.
I've got a few years on you, and I've got to that sort of stage. When you want to, you will help people, but it's just so tiring to think, actually do your own work.
I've had to research, and this is what I say to people. Just because I'm Black doesn't mean I know every Black author and every Black site that you need to look at. The same research that I'm doing, you do it yourself. Google is your friend. YouTube is your friend. It's one step. Once you start listening to like a Carla, or like literally a lot of these lectures that you listen online or documentaries, the speakers will always give you guidelines. They will always say, I read this book and I read that book and I listened to this person. So just from one lecture, Al Jazeera does loads of conversations. Mm-hmm. From one lecture on Al Jazeera or even CNN, you will pick up about 10 different authors.
But it's easier to come to the one Black friend, surely, and get them to download their knowledge into your head straight away, so that you can say, I know.
Yeah, and this is it, isn't it? And so I was at that stage where people would inbox me and say, oh, tell me what I can do. Well, no, because you shouldn't have taken George Floyd to die to say, tell me what I can do. It should have taken for Stephen Lawrence's murder to ask me, tell me what I can do, or to already know what to do. And these are people who are in their 50s and 60s. Like I said, I'm 40, so you should have known better, because you've lived through Stephen Lawrence. We've witnessed and been through Anthony Walker. We've been through a lot. We've all lived through apartheid. So you can't tell me that you have slept throughout the whole of this segregation and racism, and it's only now since George Floyd passed away that you want me to give you books.
It's quite, personally, it's quite distressing to hear that, and to understand that when people come up and say, well, I really didn't know this was happening. So how for those people who we feel for deeply, how do we make a difference generally in society? What can change having so many people uneducated about the life that people like you and I live every day? How can that change in society?
You know what? That's such a wide question, because I think people need to be open to listen, open to having uncomfortable conversations. When I was working with John Moores University, Moni Akinsanya and her colleague Julie they did this amazing reciprocal mentoring. And thankfully, their new communications exec, Tris, was like, what can we do with this? Let's push this forward. And we were able to do interviews with senior members of the leadership team and the Black and Asian students, and a lot of the senior leadership team said it was the first time that they felt they were in a safe space to have an uncomfortable conversation. And I think that's what it is. I want people to come over and not tell me what you think I can do, or not say to me, what do you think I should read? But everyone has burning questions, whether it's from the Black community or the LGBTQ community or disability, people have questions, and it's going back to, I will have an honest conversation with anyone who genuinely wants to understand my experience, but there's some people who are just gaslighters, and I refuse to entertain them. I always say,
It's draining.
yeah, and I can feel, and the thing is, and again, I talk about energy. You can sense that gaslighting energy you can smell it from a mile away, and I will have, like, if you want to meet up for a coffee or a tea or lunch, I mean, you can see on my social media, that's all I do is have coffee, lunch, brunch, dinner.
Networking. It's networking.
That's what it is, and I enjoy people genuinely wanting to have those questions and having these, discussions. Like, I've got an amazing friend, John, and he's Chinese, Chinese Scouser, and we both talk about, being African and him being Chinese, and the stereotypes and what we've had to go through, being from the diaspora, trying to still be Chinese and Scouse, and with me trying to be Nigerian and Scouse, so even within that, we're trying to educate each other within the racism that happens within our communities, so I will genuinely have an amazing conversation with someone who wants to listen. I think people have decided to not pay attention because they've not had to. And what the incident with George Floyd did was actually make them stand to attention, because they were all locked in. There was nowhere to escape. We all had to watch what happens over and over and over again. And that's when it was like, oh my God, oh, I didn't know. But then the funny thing is, I wish a lot of white people that I've had conversations with over the years would have replayed some of the conversations that they've had with me, because they would realize some of the things that they've said, whether they might not at the time have thought it was racist or, discriminatory, or, or set, well, mainly race, where you just think, God, it's amazing. Yeah.
That does take growth, and there are very few people who will reflect on that and then come back to you. I have a friend who once said that to me. They were very persistent that I was behaving in a certain way that was not necessary. I said, well, it's because of this, the racism, the this, the that. And they said, no, you can just do things. You can have more, get up and go. You can do it. And then afterwards, many years after, they came back to me and said, I didn't understand the truth of the situation. And they apologized. They said, I'm sorry. And that takes growth.
I've never had that. And it was like a friend of mine. I remember we were having dinner. This is years ago. And my friend, they were all white, I was the only black person on the table. And she said, oh, we're looking at taking the kids to Wales. And she's got mixed race kids. And I said, how have the kids coped with it? Has it been okay for them? Meaning, have they had any racist incidents? And her friend said to me, that's a bit stupid to ask. So then I said, how dare you? I was like, if you've never been through racism, you'll never understand that we are constantly having to map out and research places to go because you don't want to face racism. You don't want your kids to face any kind of racism. So you constantly you constantly having to navigate society to protect yourself and protect your children as a black and Asian. And she didn't get it. And it was so sarcastic how she said it. Like, why would you need to do that?
So do you think your experience is like having the Green Book? You remember that film?
I did the interviews for Green Book, like literally, and sometimes, and you think, and to be honest, for a lot of people, they don't have black or Asian or any ethnic friends. So you've never had, but also in the workplace, they've probably dismissed a lot of their black colleagues. I remember when I first started my World Service trips, and I specifically said, I'm only doing Africa or Asia. I'm not doing Eastern Europe. I'm not going to Russia. I'm not doing any of those places. And even Asia, I was a little bit, because I've seen that there's a lot of racism in parts of, India and Bangladesh. And so I was a bit, I don't know if I'll do those places because I've seen how it's been for Africans. So a colleague of mine said, Oh, I'm surprised. Why wouldn't you do Russia? I was like, oh, really? You're really asking me that question? And I thought, wow, are people really that oblivious that they've been in their bubble of white privilege that they've never kind of gone, no, you know what? I wouldn't suggest Russia, and you think as a fellow journalist, you would think that they would have seen or heard.
Well, this is where what they call equality and diversity training would come to the fore, because some people don't see identity. They don't see all of your identity. When people say, "I don't see color," or "I don't see your color," that is not very helpful, because that's the first thing you see about a person. Yeah. But what the point that I was going to make is that about identity. Your identity is when people. I'll just go back. When you chose not to go to Russia or wherever, it was because you are seeing things from your personal gaze. When your colleagues say, "Why don't you go to Russia?" they are seeing the world through a white gaze, through their own perception. They don't see that there would be a problem for them. Oh, I'd go there. I'd go to South Africa. I would go to Australia.
I can go anywhere.
I've got a British passport. I can go anywhere. But having a British passport and having black skin are not mutually exclusive. Inclusive, because having the passport and going. I've been to the airport. I've been fortunate because I used to work for computer companies, so I got multiple indefinite visas, so I could travel all over the world. Yeah, but some people who I travelled with, because they're black and they didn't have the visas, they would be stopped because I had that status from working for Hewlett Packard, etc. So I could they looked at my record. Oh, you travelled, whatever. Some people, it's like their identity as a black person came first before their identity as a British person. Yeah. So how do you negotiate your identity when your colleagues are saying it's simple? How do you explain?
Well, I was, you can tell I was blunt. I told them straight, I'm a black woman. It's racist. You just have to Google, Russia and racism to see how bad it is. I know athletes, when they've gone to, I think it was the Olympics, and they had to go to Russia. And they got locked into a cafe because there was neo-Nazis, and the restaurant owner saw them before even they saw them and locked them inside to protect them. So you hear all these stories, and I had to explain to them. I was like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that these things exist. Eastern Europe, for some people who are from the LGBT community and women, it's dangerous. So how would you think that race wouldn't play a part in a lot of these countries? And you talk about passports. For example, when I traveled to India, I saw how the immigration would treat the African students compared to the way they treated me. So they thought I was American. So I had this look, it's like, you don't look like them, So then when they saw my passport, it was different. Again, when I went to Bangladesh, they thought I was Indian. I had my headscarf on. I was like, me, Indian? But then there's through history that they are the core cities of Black Africans who were brought over during like slave trade and stuff like that, who have settled in India. So they assumed that I was Sidi, so I've experienced so many different forms of discrimination, but I've also seen my privilege as a Black British person compared to how they treat African students in a lot of these Asian countries,
So what do we do now? How do we bring equality, forward? Because our generation, we're still fighting, but are we fighting as hard as our parents? Have they made it any easier for us? Or have we made it any easier for our children? What next?
Well, this is it, because you know, when my grandparents moved to the UK, um, the so this is just an example. When the flat that they were living in, when my nan got pregnant with my mum, the landlords told them they had to leave because black people couldn't have children in his property. So it's like, you know, when people say no pets, you know, no pets, that's literally what it was like, you know. So I hear all these stories of what my grandparents went through. And I'm sure that my grandparents didn't expect racism to still exist, you know, right now, because they fought hard, you know, they worked hard to make sure that they were good examples of what black people are, you know. So for me now, it's like I've paid my dues. You know, I've done my job. I've done everything that I can do. I'm raising an amazing little boy. You know, but you know, you don't want to accept me, but yet you want to benefit from what this child is going to become. You know, like the Obamas, the Lewis Hamiltons, the you know. So these are the things like um, what's his name, who scored over the weekend, Raheem.
For Raheem Sterling.
You know, you want to benefit from the good times, but you don't want to support us in getting the equity that we need to be successful. You know, so I think now what I've shown my child and what a lot of my friends have shown their children about hard work pays off. I'm hoping that it will pay off for them. But what I love about the feeling right now is that, especially with the young ones, they are creating their own platforms because they can. We didn't have that. You know, we didn't have the equity, we didn't have the finances, we didn't have a bank wanting to invest in us, you know, to be able to start anything. So there were times when I used to think, am I stupid? Because I would look at myself and think, how come I can't get a loan? But then Yvonne next door, who hasn't got my qualifications, who hasn't worked what I've done, is able to start her own business, you know, before I can, you know. So it's all these things like now, you know, I've worked hard to be able to get to a stage where, you know, I can have good finances. So if whatever my son wants to do, he doesn't need to go to a bank because mummy is going to support that. So we're making changes within our own community, and hopefully that wealth generation is staying within,
Exactly. Yeah,
you
because
know.
creating wealth, retaining wealth, and passing the wealth down is opening access for other, you know, for the future generations. Um, when we're thinking about, sorry, it's my turn to have noise next door. Somebody going up on a ladder painting or something. It's constant. It really is. Sorry, I'm going to cut this bit out. That's really put me off. It's every day. Maybe I won't cut it out because every day there's something. There's somebody on the ladder, somebody banging something. Fix. You can hear them saying, "Oh, we're going to take out this shower. We're going to do this in the garden." It's oh.
Yeah.
Anyway, the part and parcel of the life. But I wanted to just sort of bring, because it's nearly 1:15. I know you've got to go, but bring this to a close. I wanted to ask about for the young people, what could we talk about? You've just mentioned your son. The possibility of your son doing his own work, you know, learning from you, having access to things which he didn't have. What do you think about the TikTok generation and people creating their own culture, and the fact that at some point Black people who are creating things on TikTok said, actually, we've done this and other people are going on TV and showing off our stuff, so we're going to stop creating, because it's about the theft of culture, because people almost like want our the nice bits of our identity, but they don't want the lived reality of everyday discrimination. What do you think about that kind of scenario, you know, going forward? How can we retain what we have and increase our wealth from our life experiences?
You know, I think when we look at other communities, so the Jewish community, the Asian community, they've always done it, and they've been very smart in how they do. And I think now, it's for us as Black people, as African and Caribbeans, to actually have that, have those dialogues, and I know exactly what we're doing. It's little things like, the elections. You will have a mosque who will discuss who they think they should all vote for. They have those conversations, and I think within the community for a long time, we've never been as united and as solid as what we should be. And I think looking at what the TikTokers have done, the Black creatives, they're all singing from the same hymn sheet, and it's working. And I think that's what we have to do, is to say, all right, then how are we going to work together to be able to do this, and ignore the noise? Because when I remember Ashley Banjo, I think it was, or was it Anthony Joshua? It was one of those, it was a prominent Black person, and they said, we need to talk about, wealth generation and spending and creating within the community. And people went crazy. Oh, it's racism, it's this. And they actually said, well, actually, this has been going on for years. If you don't respect us, then why would you respect our money? So why can't we create our own? So I think it's all about conversation and supporting each other and saying, all right, then, what do we need within the community? Is someone else doing it? How can we support them? Instead of always trying to create something different and we're all kind of disjointed. So it's a lot of it is communicating within the community and knowing the vision and where we're heading.
With that conversation, Ashley Banjo or whoever, as you say, when they're saying creating wealth in the community and invest, isn't that exactly what white communities have been doing? So why is there a problem when the Black people want to keep their own money and to build up their own communities?
Because for a long time we've just been, in the worst possible way of describing it, we have been slaves to the industry. We have been slaves to fashion. We've been slaves to, hair and beauty. It's great because I was having this conversation yesterday, actually. When you look at the majority of Black hair and beauty shops for women, Black women, they are owned by Asians, men.
Yeah.
So when you talk about these things, for a long time, when Black women spoke about these things, we were gaslighted. Oh my God. And it's like, well, no, let's face it. Also when you talk about
the food shops as well.
You talk, I remember when my auntie wanted to train to be a hairdresser, and it was a white woman who was showing her how to do Black hair.
Really?
And this is the thing, because to be a trainer, you have to go to college, which means you need to invest, which means you need to have the finances to, to even get the loan, to be able to invest in your education.
Like a disposable income.
So you can't do that. Most Black women, and this has been, most Black women in the UK for a long time were single parents, wanting to go into hairdressing, but they couldn't afford to do certain things, to get a license, to go and train. Because why wouldn't a Black woman want to become a trainer? But then you even do the course and you get failed. So there's within that as well.
With the Black hairdressing, that's a whole area that we could talk about for hours, because even when through COVID, when the hairdressers reopened, they only allowed them to reopen for a certain amount of time. So for each treatment, and that sort of obviously cut out Black hair, because you need longer for treatment. And similarly, the discrimination of things relating to Black hair, let's talk about Alice Dearing, who's going to the Olympics, the swimming cap, the sole capped, and so the Olympics committee saying, well, we don't see a need for it. She is an Olympic swimmer. She uses them. How can you discriminate?
Why? And it's these questions when you kind of say, why? Why? You didn't have to bring out that statement. You didn't have to. It doesn't affect you. If somebody is using something, they're using it to protect themselves. They're using it because that's what they can find. I mean, we can talk about this whole, sport is another you know, another direction, because I was talking about, you know, Caster Semenya, you know, just a
Yes.
couple of weeks ago, you know, when a Black person is gifted, talented, then, you know, we have to cut this out. We have to make it hard. I mean, even like Simone Biles, like there's
Yeah.
always barriers to our success. So
Because it is not seen as because white achievement is normal, but Black achievement, the reason why Black achievement is seen as exceptional and needs to be explained is because there are so many barriers already in the way. So when people like the Jamaican runner Usain Bolt, when he sort of achieves at his level, it's like, how did he do that? The fact that it was just training and discipline, it's like, yes, but how? You know, and when you hear sports commentators and they're talking about, that's why I stopped watching most sport apart from tennis, and even that grates me sometimes. When they talk about Black people, the commentators will often refer to them in an animalistic type way, but the white achievers, the white footballers are just skilled, but the Black people, you know, he's running like a whatever. And I'm just thinking, you know, could you stop? Could you please stop?
yeah, and you know what, Marge, you know, obviously we're going to end, and I always say to people, could you, so my CV is crazy, you know. I've been at the BBC for 16 years in November. I've worked across different departments in different roles. I've faced racism in the industry, you know, an industry that I'm so passionate about. I've worked international. I've been to different countries training journalists. I've got my own company that trains women. I'm a single parent. And when I say single, I am single, you know.
Mm.
And you think to yourself, if this, and I know this, if I was a white woman called Mary or Joanne or whatever, oh my God, I would have been in the Echo. I would have been in, you know, I would have been all over. But no one cares because it's like, well, so what? But then I've been on different boards. I can count, I've probably been on 10 boards supporting other people's companies, other people's charities, you know. But when you openly say this to people, it's like, oh, but then if I went for a job, even within the BBC, with what I've got for a senior level, the person who would get it will probably not have the international skills that I've got, the international network, because my network is global. And that's one thing I love. And that's one thing that I use to support other companies is my network, but also seeing how other companies and charities work internationally as well. You know, so I would like, I always say if I was a white woman, oh my goodness, like my life would be completely different. And that's why I want people to listen and to understand when I'm talking. I'm not just a presenter on BBC Radio Merseyside. I've contributed so much in this city and globally as well. But you'll find that it'll be interesting how many people even know who I am. You know, when the Echo writes there, you know, people to watch, my name never comes up.
Uh,
Never comes up.
it's a sobering fact to think about that, and I know it's true because I've had similar experiences, and I've not worked in the same industry as you, but with my research background and my writing ability. You see people who've got basically 3 lines on their CV of experience, and they are getting chosen above you, although my name sounds more English than yours, because I know that the name sometimes has something to do with it. Because there was an example the other day. A woman went for a job, and the response to the email wasn't supposed to go to her, but it said,
Okay.
yeah, oh no, another Nigerian or another African because of her name. You see, that's what's going on behind the scenes. But you know, sometimes I get opportunities when people don't actually know me, but I can see how, you know, we are generally blocked because of our skin, you know,
But, no,
the
but
skin
also,
of men.
but being Black women, no one wants to pay you what you should be paid. Like, I hear what white men are getting paid in the city, but then if I said the same amount, it's like, oh, but then to me, I'm just like, well, if you don't want to pay that, then don't get me involved.
Well, one of the things which I've sort of rediscovered for myself, and I think it gives us hope. You started with hope as well, and I think we'll end on hope, is that the power of no, because we have to learn to say no to people. If they can't pay you what you're worth, then you say no. I will take my services elsewhere, or I will sort of work and go a different avenue. Like, and something that you always also raise is that we can open our own doors. We can create our own doors. So, thinking about hope, how are you going to use hope in your future going forward?
You know what? I've been obviously, I've moaned quite a bit, which I've enjoyed because I don't get to moan enough because I'm always positive about everything. And I
Well,
think,
just sharing your reality.
yeah, it's my reality. And, I've been blessed with lockdown. So I've really enjoyed lockdown because it's opened up so many opportunities for me outside of Merseyside, which is unfortunate, but I've managed to do really well outside of Liverpool. I've
Okay.
worked with some amazing companies from my kitchen. I've produced some fantastic content for other people, who have done their research. I'm seeing that I'm the best person for the job. So I'm hopeful. I've learned that just because you don't respect me doesn't mean I can't respect myself, doesn't mean that
Amen.
someone else doesn't see what I've always seen in myself. So yeah, so I'm always hopeful, always hopeful. I think I always say, the best is yet to come. We're literally just scratching the surface, and I'm hopeful that things will change, maybe sooner rather than later. But I'm not waiting for everyone else anymore. It's about me making those changes myself. So for anyone who feels that they're in a very sticky situation, waiting for someone to employ them, just start yourself. Look outside your comfort zone, look outside your city, look outside the country. Even there's so many opportunities, so yeah, I'm constantly hopeful, and yeah, I'm loving life apart from the noise. I'm loving life.
Well, on that really hopeful and positive note, this has been Marjorie Morgan with We Talk, and I've been here with Gunan Adamu. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your journey, and let's keep stepping forward in hope. Thank you.
Thank you.